Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it be hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, brain fog, or weight gain around the middle that seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere, despite you not changing anything. So you go back to those tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, yet it feels like nothing is working. You're putting in all this effort and it actually feels like you're moving backwards. But we know now that your body is inherently different now you've gone through these hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to really help you understand how your body changes in this time of your life so you can reach those health and fitness goals, feel in control and at home in your body again, live a life full of vitality, and really understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today I have a very fun topic, coffee. Coffee. We all love our coffee, right? And I want to talk a little bit about how coffee is going to actually affect your hormones. And this isn't me saying don't drink coffee because I'd be a hypocrite. I love me some coffee. I have some right here in my coffee mug. It's hazelnut brewed, delicious. I love it. We get it from Costco and it is chef's kiss, my favorite. So we're going to talk a little about how it affects different hormones in your body. We're going to talk about thyroid function and tips to enjoy your coffee without any of potential negative side effects because we love our coffee here, right? Big coffee fans here. So there is definitely research out there that tells you how great coffee can be, like 100%. This can be due to like the antioxidants that are in it and some anti-inflammatory compounds. However, we do have to take a little bit of a look now as to how this is going to affect our hormones, especially since going through perimenopause and the years that follow, right? This is what we always talk about is how do the things that we used to do now affect our hormones and how can we mitigate those changes, right? So first of all, let's tackle how caffeine actually works. Because a lot of people don't understand this. They're just like, oh, I drink it and I'm not tired. Or we have people who drink it and they're like, I don't feel any different, which is a whole other thing. But let's dive into how caffeine actually works. So caffeine keeps you awake. Well, it actually just stops you from feeling tired. It doesn't provide you with energy at all, right? It doesn't make you stay awake. It just reduces the feelings of being tired. And it does this by stimulating your nervous system and blocking adenosine, okay? Adenosine is going to make you feel sleepy. So by caffeine blocking those receptors, you're actually going to feel more energized instead because it's preventing adenosine from attaching to those receptors to make you feel tired. So it's just like, putting a little lock on the door. Like now you can't open it. You can't open it and make me feel sleepy, okay? That's how it works. So how much you have and how sensitive you are to the effects of caffeine is going to vary greatly person to person. I mean, we can all think of people who have one cup and they have the jitters and they're like anxious and get really hot, right? And then we know people who can have a pot of coffee and they seem completely unscathed, right? Which usually not, and we'll dive into that a little bit more, but there's going to be different factors that are going to influence these things. So it can even change not only person to person, but also during different times of your life. Of course, we're talking about perimenopause and menopause, right? As well as times where you are stressed versus relaxed, your age, your hormones, and it can also make pre-existing hormonal imbalances worse. So you might be like, oh, I was fine and now I have coffee and I don't feel so great. Hormonal imbalances. Let me tell you a story. I used to take pre-workout, no problem, right? There's lots of caffeine in there. No problem. Go to the gym, feel great. The last 3 times that I have tried to take pre-workout before going to the gym, I have had to leave because I feel so anxious. I've actually cried at the gym because of the effects of the caffeine and whatever else was in my pre-workout. And I've tried a lot of different brands and just haven't really figured anything out yet. So again, this is because I was starting to go through some hormonal changes. I was really struggling with some stuff. And again, not so great, right? And you're like, I didn't change anything internally. Things are going on. So if you had these internal hormonal imbalances, caffeine can make those effects worse. And when you have low progesterone, anxiety increases a lot easier. So that was me. Good old progesterone. So let's talk about the hormones now. So of course, the first one we're always going to tackle is estrogen, because she is the queen bee. She is the most dramatic, right? So there have been studies done on different ethnicities, actually, which is I love science, you guys, so much. This stuff is so cool. I can't wait to tell you about it. I get so excited. So there have been studies done on different ethnicities, and it showed that in white women who drank more than 200 milligrams, which is about 2+ cups of coffee, they had lower estrogen levels than those who consumed less. Very interesting. Okay, so in white women, they found that those who had more caffeine were more predisposed to have lower estrogen levels, which again, if we're in perimenopause and menopause, we don't want to tank those, right? However, in Asian women, women who had more than 2 cups of coffee were found to have higher estrogen levels. Very interesting. And then same for Black women as well. So crazy how your ethnicity and background in these things, where you came from, your ancestry, can actually have an influence on how different things affect our hormones. This is why you can't cookie cutter things. This is why we need to deep dive and see what works for your body and how your body responds. This is why we take so much information when we're working with clients, and seeing how their body responds to different things. Is what works for Susie might be a catastrophe for Kim. Right? So we need to really pay attention to these things. And these are all the things that influence us. It's so cool. I love it. So why is this happening? Why is this affecting our estrogen levels, right? Well, caffeine and estrogen are actually both metabolized by the same enzyme. It's CYP1A2. Not that you need to know that, but cool, right? So they're both broken down. That's what metabolize means. They're both broken down by the same compound in your body, the same enzyme. And there are different genetic differences in that enzyme, which is why caffeine affects women from different ethnic backgrounds differently, which is so cool. So if you are someone who struggles with estrogen dominance, you will most likely have a low amount of that enzyme to help break it down, because that's why it's accumulating, right? We can have estrogen dominance from a few things. We can have it from estrogen levels just being too high in general. You can have estrogen dominance because progesterone is too low compared to estrogen. So you can actually still have low estrogen levels and have estrogen dominance because the ratio between progesterone and estrogen is not good. And then estrogen dominance, you can have high estrogen levels or too high compared to progesterone because your body produces too much of it, which in perimenopause and menopause, not super typical, right? You can have that your body is not good at breaking it down, so it accumulates, right? So you have some detox pathways that aren't working really good, which is why we do Dutch testing with a lot of women, because it shows us which pathway, because there can be 3 that are not allowing estrogen to be broken down, or digestion is really slow. And what actually happens if you're not having regular bowel movements, which is how we get rid of extra estrogen, your body reabsorbs it. So there's a few different mechanisms as to why you can have estrogen dominance. But regardless, you need to have this enzyme to help break it down. So if you are someone who struggles with estrogen dominance, you could have low amounts of that enzyme. So then having extra coffee is probably not a great choice, because now coffee is going to take the priority of being broken down over estrogen because they use that same enzyme, right? So let's say you have one hammer and you have estrogen and you have coffee, right? So if that hammer is really small and not super great, and then your body's prioritizing breaking down caffeine instead, it allows estrogen to further accumulate in your body, making those symptoms a lot worse. We know with estrogen dominance, we struggle a lot with belly fat as well. So that's something else to be aware of. So again, isn't that so cool? So if you have estrogen dominance, I would be cautious as to having too much caffeine, because it could actually make it worse. So all my estrogen dominant ladies out there, just be mindful of that, right? So, okay, amazing. That's estrogen. So now we have thyroid. Okay, so there is some research to suggest that caffeine may, okay, so this isn't a be all end all. So some research suggests that the caffeine may inhibit thyroid hormones, but there needs to be way more research done in this area. There's very minimal studies done. However, if you take medication for your thyroid, you should be aware that drinking caffeine can actually interfere with the absorption of those medications, making it less effective. This is why you might see an increase in dose when you don't actually need it per se. It could actually be because you're having too much coffee. So that's just something to be aware of. So I would absolutely chat with your pharmacist about this to see if there's that interaction where caffeine would impair the absorption of those medications, because then you're taking the medication, not really getting the full benefit from it. And we also know during perimenopause and menopause, our thyroid function starts to slow down. When thyroid function gets slow, our metabolism slows down. So the thyroid is kind of like the thermostat that determines how many calories your body burns at rest. So that dial will come down if thyroid function is low. So your body becomes worse at burning calories. When your body is worse at burning calories, it's obviously going to make it harder for you to lose weight and make it way easier to gain weight, right? Because your body's just not good at utilizing fuel. So we don't want that. So make sure that you're talking to your pharmacist about this because it's very medication dependent as well. It's also important to note that caffeine increases how quickly food and fluids move through your digestive system. This is why it can negatively impact your blood sugar and why we always tell women to eat before they have their coffee. Otherwise, we can see a spike in their blood sugar and you're doing that first thing in the morning. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about caffeine here, breakfast hormones, why we push that. It's also the same reason why we tell women to eat within and this is why you should wait like 30 to 60 minutes after taking your medication to drink coffee as well. Otherwise, it'll speed up the digestion and absorption. Also, coffee is not so great for adrenal health. So it raises your cortisol levels. So what we see in a lot of women today is that you are way underfed and way overstressed. Okay. Like we see this all of the time. Adrenals aren't doing so good. We know that when your stress hormones are high, we're seeing that obviously your cortisol is going to be high. That's your stress hormone, but we see that your sex hormone production decreases. So more hormonal imbalances. We see that your energy gets worse. You're up between 1 and 4 a.m. You struggle with your blood sugars, even in the absence of food. We see your gut health get worse. We have more bloating. We have more constipation, more food sensitivities. We see our inflammation go up, which also increases when estrogen goes down. We see our liver health get worse, which can also contribute to more hormonal imbalances because then our liver is working really hard to break down other things. More cravings, more irritability, more anxiety. Like there are so many things that come with those raised cortisol levels. And when estrogen starts to decline and we're in perimenopause and menopause, we can't handle stress like we used to. Before we could handle a 9 out of 10, and then we would see cortisol come up. And then we would see those negative side effects of everything that you were dealing with, right? But now as estrogen declines, now you can only handle a 5 out of 10 before you see all these negative consequences start to come. So now it's like, oh man, I was handling everything so good. Now everything is changing. Yeah, like now you're gaining weight because your cortisol is really high, even though you haven't changed anything externally. Internally it has. So now you're struggling with blood sugar. Now you're struggling with inflammation and gut health issues and bloating, and sex hormones are dropping even more. And we're seeing your thyroid slow down and your metabolism slow down. And you can't build muscle mass and your energy is poor and you are not having the best performance in the gym. You're irritable. You can't focus. You're feeling like puffy and you can't lose weight, or the weight gain is starting to come on regardless of you cutting calories, right? And cutting calories, cutting carbs are going to increase your cortisol. So the very thing that you're doing to try and improve your health is actually making it worse. And we see this all the time in women, like all of the time. Like I literally just got a message from a woman today and she's like, I cannot believe I am down 4 inches and I'm eating more food and more carbs. She's like, I was so afraid. And I'm like, but amazing for you for like doing the dive, doing it slowly, doing this the right way, trusting the process, focusing on resistance training. She's seeing amazing results just by doing those things, which is awesome. Okay, so now back to caffeine. So now that you understand the whole cortisol and like negative side effects for like weight gain and your body, what we see is when you wake up, that's when your cortisol levels are highest. We want to bring them down, right? Because otherwise we're seeing more muscle breakdown, we're seeing more issues with blood sugar. And when you're in this stress state and cortisol is high, what we see is your body's like, I need energy. So it breaks down muscle mass, takes it to your liver, turns it to sugar, pumps it into your bloodstream for energy. Okay. It does this in the absence of food. So then cortisol keeps going up. And then insulin needs to be called in to do something with those blood sugars because we're not actually doing anything. Like we're just chilling, right? So then we're doom scrolling or whatever it might be, driving, being sedentary at work, right? So now insulin comes in to bring those sugars into your cells, right? And if we have it, then the blood sugar goes down, cortisol comes back up, dumps more sugar in, insulin comes up. So you have the cycle of high cortisol, high insulin, high cortisol, high insulin, high blood sugar, low blood sugar, high blood sugar, low blood sugar. And you're on this roller coaster all day. And so what we want to do is how do we prevent that first spike or like having that continue on during the day so that you're not having these negative side effects? Because with your blood sugar goes up and down, up and down, up and down all day and for like years of doing this, what we're seeing is then you become insulin resistant, right? And when we become insulin resistant, we see more inflammation, we see higher cortisol levels, we see more fat gain, right? Our body starts storing fat, and then those fat cells themselves are going to release more cortisol as well. And they're also going to release more inflammation themselves, making this cycle even worse because inflammation is going to drive cortisol to come up as well. So it's just this vicious cycle. And so what you do is you wake up and you have your cup of coffee. You're already rushing during the day, right? So that's spiking your cortisol more. That's spiking your blood sugars more, even though you're not eating. And then you're fasting. And then you might have like a teeny tiny meal at lunchtime. And then of course you're struggling with energy and crashes. And now you have cravings because your blood sugar tanked, and then you give into the donuts, right? So one of the best things that you can do is have a solid breakfast with like 30 grams of protein. The more the better, right? And you're getting this from whole foods. So eat within 90 minutes of waking. Make sure you eat most of your protein first and then your carbohydrates. So like this morning, for example, I had a breakfast bowl with eggs and Dijon mustard because I'm a huge Dijon mustard fan. It is my favorite. And then I had some leftover chicken feta sausage from the pierogies we had last night. So I cut up one of those, put it in there as well. I had some cut up peppers from when we had wraps. So I put those in my scramble as well. And then I added some light feta cheese or non-fat feta cheese as well. That bowl itself was like 35 grams of protein on its own. Then I had a piece of toast after I ate that with a little bit of butter and some pear jam, which I love so much. It's my favorite. My friend owns like a little like mini farmer's market almost is what I would like to call it. Like it's I don't know what the word is for it, but like people can come and sell all their stuff, and it's locally made and I love it and so delicious. And she always brings me some when she comes to visit, and I love it so much. So I had toast afterwards. My toast had 4 grams of fiber in it. It had 5 grams of protein. It is a whole grain bread, just regular brown bread that has more flax seeds and quinoa in it. So it boosts up the fiber and protein content that way. I had it afterwards so it wouldn't spike my blood sugars. And now I'm good. Like I was good until like 1 o'clock when it was like time for me to have lunch, which was amazing because my blood sugar stayed stable. They increase slowly when you eat, maintain, and then come back down. I had my coffee after I ate. And so then I didn't have to worry about things digesting too quickly because the protein from all my food and the breakfast slowed down how quickly my body would digest that. So I'm not seeing a blood sugar spike and drop. So I'm seeing cortisol start to come down, which is what you want. You want cortisol to be like, it wakes you up, that's highest in the morning, and then it comes back down. So if we're having coffee on an empty stomach and then like fasting, like you are sending your cortisol levels through the roof. And you are starting this crazy blood sugar up and down, stress hormones up and down, struggling with energy, struggling with cravings. So that is like a massive issue that we're seeing in women. If you can start having breakfast, it is a huge game changer. Massive. All of a sudden your cravings in the afternoon are gone. It's amazing. The other thing about coffee too that you should know is that it's also a gut irritant. And a lot of people with thyroid issues have more intestinal permeability, which means they have more sensitivities, like food sensitivities and more inflammation as well. So coffee can make that worse if you're struggling with thyroid issues. And it's also important to note that when our cortisol levels are high, it actually makes our thyroid function even slower. So by having that caffeine in the morning on an empty stomach, not only are you affecting your hormone levels and your blood sugar, you're also going to be affecting your thyroid function in the long term. So again, we got to be very, very aware of that, right? So, and then of course, cortisol, I just talked about, it's going to release that sugar into the bloodstream. It can also increase your blood pressure, right? So we know that having caffeine on an empty stomach, if you're already struggling with cardiovascular disease, like that could potentially make things worse, right? It can progress that disease, which we do not want. So caffeine is just going to increase cortisol levels, and the influence can be even stronger if you already have other stressors present. So if you are already not sleeping enough, if you are already under eating, if you are already not having enough carbs, if you are doing high intensity exercise like the cardios and the HIITs and the F45s, if you are, dealing with stress and you're go, and you got deadlines at work and financial stress and relationship stress and all these things, the coffee can actually amplify those things, right? And so if you sip coffee all day just trying to fight off the need for a nap and then find you're just exhausted later anyways and you can't sleep well, this is probably where caffeine is part of the problem, right? Like it impacts our nervous system. And so it just keeps us in that fight or flight response. And so it's a perfect disaster for what we call HPA axis dysregulation, which is basically your stress response system. So you're just stuck in that fight or flight, which most of us are already there, right? So we want to make sure that we're avoiding that, because that's where we see hormone function decreases, hormone production decreases, blood sugar gets worse, thyroid function gets worse, energy gets worse, worse brain fog, worse mental health, more instances of depression and anxiety. You're struggling to sleep. You have more cravings. You can't build muscle mass. You can't lose fat. You have more bloating, right? Like, we don't realize how some of these little things add up so much. So by eating enough food and having your breakfast and not having coffee on an empty stomach, you can make massive changes in your health, which is then going to make massive changes in your body composition as well, right? So this is really important to be aware of too. And then we have progesterone. There is not a ton of research on progesterone, particularly with caffeine, but what we typically see with women is that if they're having a lot of caffeine, typically progesterone levels are low, because when your cortisol levels are high, progesterone is always going to be lower. So if you are someone that's in a high stress state already and having a lot of caffeine, chances are progesterone is likely going to be low as well. So we can see how caffeine might not be super supportive of our goals and can actually make things worse, can make our energy worse, right? Because it doesn't provide us with energy. It just stops us from feeling tired. So your body is still deprived of energy when you're just running on caffeine. That is not good, right? We don't want to be like, oh, instead of fueling my car, I'm just going to cover the thing that tells me my gas tank is empty. That's like literally what you're doing. We don't want that. So how can we have our caffeine? Because I'm not about to give it up. I love my coffee, right? So how can we still have caffeine and enjoy it, but better support our hormones, better support our nervous system, and then better support our body composition, right? Like the physique goals that we might have. So one, having organic is always going to be great, right? It's going to help helps you avoid toxins in your body and reduce inflammation that negatively impact those hormones. We're exposed to toxins all the time, right? Like drinking from plastics, fast food, like they have super high levels of phthalates, which is like plastics in the food itself because of all the packaging and things like that. All the little things that add up between like chemicals and perfumes and beauty products and the soaps and the washer detergent, all those things, right? So you just want to reduce your footprint where you can, right? It's never one thing that causes it. It's the accumulation of everything. So being mindful of that can be really helpful, especially if you love your coffee and you drink it every day. Number two, make sure you grind your own coffee beans. This is actually really awesome if you are able to do it. Obviously, we don't do this all the time. We use our K-Cups, our Keurig. We love it, although we did just get like a combo one that has the Keurig K-Cup option, but also you have the option to like brew a what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, a bigger one, like 10 cups, 8 cups, whatever you want to call it, of coffee. Why is that word escaping me? I don't love that it's not there. Anyways, that's going to bother me. That's really going to bother me. But anyway, a pot. Oh my gosh. So we can do a single serve or we can do a pot of coffee. Why was that so hard? Anyways, so when we do the brewing of the coffee pot, we do grind our own coffee beans. And the reason that's really great to do is that antioxidants and the anti-inflammatory molecules are always going to be best when fresh. And it also tastes better. So that's also a perk, right? Number three, when having coffee is really watch what you add. This isn't saying you can't have cream in your coffee, because I have cream in my coffee literally every day. There's a Southern butter pecan one because I love my pecan pie. It's my favorite. If you guys have been following me for any amount of time, you know how much I love my pecan pie. It's exclusively why I will not diet and cut calories over the holidays, because pecan pie, right? But watch what you add, right? You want to be mindful of what you're putting in your coffee. So like I was actually listening to a podcast of some friends, and they were talking about their coffee orders and like how disappointing it was when they realized that like their little local boutique kind of coffee shop, like she had like the almond milk and a few other things, because she doesn't tolerate dairy very well. And she actually watched had her glucose monitor on. And like, even with eating enough beforehand, like having a solid protein breakfast and going for a walk and having her coffee, her blood sugar still spiked a lot, because the almond milks and the oat milks, like it's just sugar. They're highly processed as well. So like that didn't help very much. So be mindful of what you're having. If you can have regular milk, like if you can tolerate it, have that, right? But like be really mindful of like how much you're having. Like maybe it's not always a latte. Maybe you got to switch and have coffee with just like a tablespoon or so of creamer instead, because those things can really, really crank up the calories. For myself, like I love Starbucks's pecan praline latte, chestnut praline latte. But I do non-fat milk. I ask for the non-sweetener stuff, what is it? Non-sweet, non-fat, non-sweet, unsweet, non-sweet. Oh my gosh, you guys, the words today. I'm podcasting later in the day, so this has got to be why it's happening to me today. But I always ask for that to try and bring the calorie amount down and skip the whipped cream, because it is crazy how many calories are packed in that and how quickly that will spike your blood sugars. The next one, number 4, is limit to 1 a day, which is really hard for people. If you're doing a lot more than that, slowly switch to decaf and bring it down. Because the more coffee that you consumed, the more stressed out your body is going to be. And a lot of us are far more stressed out than we think. Like I can't tell you how many clients we have come into our program who they're like, oh, I'm handling it well. And we do our stress assessment with them, or we do a Dutch test with them. And the levels and scoring that come back is like, you are way more stressed than you realize. Like your body is telling you so many things, and that coffee addiction can just make it worse. So limiting to 1 a day and making sure that you're cutting yourself off by 1 p.m. just because caffeine does stay in your system a lot longer and can really impact sleep. And we know sleep is so important during perimenopause and menopause. It's a very common complaint that we get. And studies do show like 2 groups in a fat loss phase. The one that gets less quality sleep and less hours of sleep loses less fat, they lose more muscle and struggle with more cravings and energy. So really paying attention to how that impacts you. Plus, a lot of women will actually start to have hot flashes with caffeine now as well, because when our estrogen levels start to decline, we become more, our like heat sensors in our brain become more, or heat center, I should say, in our brain becomes more sensitive. So before, it's like you could have a higher change in body temperature before your body would like start to sweat to try and cool you down. When estrogen declines, it becomes more sensitive. So you have a much narrower range of where your body temperature can fluctuate before you start experiencing the hot flashes. And caffeine does raise your internal body temperature. So if you're someone who really struggles with hot flashes, reducing caffeine can be helpful as well. And the last thing is to make sure that you are having that breakfast first to stabilize those blood sugars, to balance the hormones, to bring the cortisol levels down, to really support you. I cannot tell you how important it is to massively pay attention to your cortisol levels, to really pay attention to that, because anything that's going to improve your metabolism and make your body better at burning calories is going to be through cortisol. Like cortisol, if you can get that addressed, it's going to improve your metabolism, your body composition, your hormonal imbalances, your hormonal symptoms, your sleep, your energy, your ability to put on muscle mass, like everything. So I cannot tell you how important it is to pay attention to these things, because they make a difference in the long run. So again, coffee, amazing, but try organic, grind fresh, watch what you add, limit to 1 per day, cut yourself off by 1, breakfast first, always. And then, if you guys enjoyed this one, please share it with your friends and family. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, that you had a wonderful, happy holiday season. And I can't wait to kick off 2025. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.